first video, and I'm going to be speaking about introducing the grayscale and what we call values in the work, in the drawing and in the paintings that we do. Values are very, very simply from the darkest black to the white of the paper being the lightest tone. In between, if we mix white and black, we get all different qualities of light grey, middle tones, dark tones. We're talking about light and dark, and in the first instance we're talking about light and dark just with black and white. Later on we'll do the same using one particular blue colour. The eye registers light and dark before it does colour. So, it makes sense really just to have a good understanding of what this is all about before we get into more maybe sophisticated, complicated pictures and images. So, we've got an image which is a very light image here. Black and white and grey. I've deliberately chosen this image because by drawing petals, even if we're just not super precise, it's not so important. It's not like drawing something more like a face or something like that. And to help us out, what I've just done is divided this image into 6 different squares with a ruler and a pencil. Okay, I've done the same on the cartridge paper that I'm going to be using for my drawing. Now, I've done it fairly darkly. You can do it a lot lighter. Okay, so that later when you come to erase it, you're not going to get these lines. They're going to totally disappear. This is going to give me an indication now of where that petal lies in relation to this petal, how these petals relate to these petals. So it's all about one thing in relation to another. Now the drawing, let me just do this very quickly. It's not a precise drawing. I don't want us to spend hours and hours doing this. That's not the objective. The objective is to learn about values, and I just need an idea of the image that we're going to do. So I've managed to take off quite a lot of that structural pencil work. Now, just going back to these shades. Now, it's not important to use all these shades. When we're mixing pigment, we could probably get even more different shades of grey from this scale of colour. If we add one colour, then the whole thing opens up into a totally different dimension. We could probably get about 20-30 colours just using one colour, black and white. Okay, so as you can see, it makes no sense buying pots and pots and pots of different colours. It's so important to learn to mix our own subtle original colours. So what I'm going to be using a very, very light shade to get started. Then I'm going to use a middle grey shade, and then I'm going to go, never be afraid of the dark, of one of these really super dark matte grey black colours. So let me just move this. I will work on this area. To start with, I'm just going to add one area of very, very light shading. Work along with me if you can. Now, I'm just moving the pencil here. In fact, what might be a good idea is just to put some sort of tissue paper or a napkin under my hand here so that I don't get any dark marks from the side of my hand. I'm working very, very delicately with a very light pressure, and as you can see, I'm not working with the tip at the moment. I'm using the side of this graphite pencil that I've got here. You could use a number 3B, 5B would be absolutely perfect, or just use one of these very, very soft graphite pencils, which are very, very versatile, that I'm using here. So all I'm doing just to get started is some very, very light shading. So you can see that almost some parts just slightly darker, but very, very light. And what's really important here is that, as you can see, I've left some areas of the paper totally white because I want to leave that there as my first and lightest colour. So as I continue to work now, I'm going to leave some of that white, pure white, and you'll see when I start to add the darks later how it really adds contrast. So now I'm going to move in with one of the more middle tones. To get one of the middle tones that I'm using here, I have to use more pressure on the pencil itself that I'm applying to the paper. With experience, you'll get a real feel of this. It's difficult at first. You have to persevere, but I'm doing exactly the same backwards and forwards movement that I was doing before with the side of the pencil, but just adding a slight more pressure. And I'm just building up. I've got this is a lovely textured cartridge paper, and it's quite nice to see that as I build up this tone, the texture is coming through, and it is quite attractive. It's going to be like an added feature on the drawing itself. Right, middle shades. Now what I'm going to do is start using more the tip of my pencil. I've got a pencil sharpener here to keep it sharp at all times, and now I want to move into one or two of these dark areas here, because this drawing now needs more definition. I need to give it a little bit more contrast and define the drawing part. Here's the final drawing. all the petals on this bloom. Let's remember, we've used the white of the paper. We've used a very, very light grey as our initial layer. Then we moved in with a medium shade, starting to give the image a three-dimensional rounded quality. And then the final part of the drawing, the final tuning, is where we're going in very, very dark to add shadow and depth to the overall image.